that it doesn't say so on the ballot. I understand now that it could have been confusing to some people. Chuck?
Eva, I might suggest that if anyone voted...
Please, because I can't hear you.
I might suggest that if anyone has already cast their vote and nominated voted for more than 5 vice presidents, that they contact you so that they can correct it. So if
Okay.
you understand what I mean?
Yes, I certainly understand. So if anybody of you has circled more than 5 candidates for vice president, or more than 1 candidate for president-elect, secretary general, or treasurer, can you please contact me after the end of the day today, and we will find a way to amend this. And now, Jim?
Is it 5 or up to 5?
It is up to 5. 5 is maximum that you can circle, but
You could circle less, fewer than 5?
you can circle less. You would not be exercising your full power in voting this way, but it's certainly your choice. Now, before we proceed with the next agenda item, I will just hand over the mic to Russell to make one special acknowledgement.
This won't take long, but it was just before the break, just as we took the break, Helmut Langer, past president of icograda, came up to us and presented us with these artefacts, which are here in front of you. Just got to be careful not to tip them in my coffee. But it's a collection of letters and documents and photographs from that have been donated by to us by Niels Strensberg, and he's been kind enough to pass them on via Helmut to us, and these documents will go straight to the Brighton Archive in England. It does include one particular artefact, which is a letter from King Harold from Norway to icograda, and I'll just delicately hold it up. And I'll just read it to you. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all the participants to the icograda 25th anniversary. So it's almost halfway through our overall history, which will be the 50th will be celebrated in Istanbul. Graphic designers are responsible for many of the symbols surrounding us in our everyday life. Since these symbols play a major role in human interaction, graphic designers must shoulder a heavy responsibility. I feel confident that you are all aware of this responsibility and that conferences such as this one contribute to your art. I wish you all the best of success during your anniversary meeting. So I will carefully hand this back to Brenda, so I'm no longer responsible. And that will go straight to the archives, as I said. Thank you, Helmut. It was King Harold from Norway.
Thank you, Helmut, and thank you, Niels. So, to resume our proceedings, we are going to be briefed by David Berman on sustainability standards, and since everybody's energy level seems to be quite low, David has promised to break into a song, so...
Sustainability song? King Harold sustainability song. Hey, yeah, I've been asked to present this rapidly, both to keep you alive, but also because we're running late. So I'm going to cover a lot of stuff. I'm going to cover it quickly. So if you have more questions, I'm around, of course, because this is the topic I am most passionate about. You know, for those who know me, you know this is why I really came to join this group. So here's the deal. I want to start off with thanks, because I'm going to show you something that excites me a lot, but I don't want you to think it comes from me. It comes from all these different people, and even more so, who have contributed to the thinking over the last few years, though I guess King Harold gets a say too, the thinking over the last few years in our organization that has brought us to the point we are today, which for me is a really exciting point in time. After this presentation, I'm going to ask you to consider a powerful resolution. So let's get right into it. Could you flip to the first slide? What I'm speaking to you about today is the icograda sustainability standards, which is what has evolved out of the mandate we were given in Beijing in 2009. And what it is, it's a global system for sustainability certification of communication design. We live in this time of fantastic power. And ultimately, not only do we have to carefully look at what we do with the power we have as designers, but once we recognize how much power we have to recognize that design is at the core of some of the world's largest problems, but there isn't a problem on Earth that can't be solved with, that cannot be solved without design thinking. And this is a brief history of where we've gone with sustainable thinking over just 4 years. In 2008 in Seoul, we adopted a greener meetings policy for icograda, which was to apply to both our board meetings as well as our design meetings and our congresses. And over these years, this has gone from being an idealistic statement to something that's measurable and now finds its way into our meeting agreements. In Beijing in 2009, the General Assembly of over 40 countries unanimously adopted our comprehensive icograda sustainability policy. And it made a demand that within a year we would have a policy in place. And this policy, in a nutshell, you can read it in the minutes from Beijing because we all have a copy at our desks, but ultimately it said this. We all agreed that professionalism in communication design and graphic design would be redefined to say that sustainable practice is not just a nice thing to do, that it's part of how we roll. It's what we do. And we would start steps towards redefining what professionalism means in our practice. So then, as a response to this, I was asked to lead the Sustainability Committee in Beijing 2009, our first board meeting. I was given the mandate to deliver to our membership something that would fulfill this commitment to adopt a policy within a year. And by the time we got to Madrid in 2010, we had a framework available that was approved by the board which exceeded what the General Assembly had requested we would do. And here I am in 2011, proud to say that I want to show you an outline of what that standard looks like and tell you what the next steps we intend to do. So the challenge was this. I've been traveling for 10 years complaining about the state of the world and urging designers to recognize their power and do something about it. But now, it thrills me that we go out talking about sustainability, people are almost sick of hearing about it. It's like, yeah, sustainability enough, of course, we're all on board, we love sustainability. What people want to know is how much is enough. Not so much for the tree-hugging, leading-edge sustainable designers, but the mainstream designer who's almost intimidated that if they do a project and they say, I did it sustainably, they're afraid some other more radical designer will say, that's not sustainable enough. And that type of intimidation is a real problem. So what we wanted to come up with was an actual measurable standard, because we are aligned with groups like Designers Accord and Living Principles, who identify the ideal, the leading edge ideal. But what we need is a measurement system to decide just how we will certify if sustainable is enough. So what we came up with is a system which is simple, that teaches people about sustainability, that measures sustainability, and then celebrates it. And so this diagram is the entire system. So this diagram basically outlines the whole concept, which is that the sustainability standard would live in a virtual space on a website, and that we would have a thin resource knowledge base where all of our partners in sustainability would provide the information people need to know in order to create sustainable products. And then designers come to this site where they involve themselves in a two-step process. The first step is when you're planning your project, you decide, how will I make my project sustainable enough? And you may recall, if you were in Beijing, we came up with a very ambitious definition of sustainability, because we're not just talking about environmental sustainability, we're talking about financial sustainability, cultural sustainability, and social sustainability. So the idea is first you would plan your project, and then later on you come back once your project is ready and register to get, well, you'd register your product online. And what you'd register for is to get issued what we call an icograda S number, a sustainability number, which is a unique number we issue for each product but it also doubles as a URL. And then the public can engage with the product. The public then actually can go to that URL and look up a chain of custody of the product so they can see who designed it and why they claimed it was sustainable enough. And they can also challenge it because it's a voluntary process. Next slide, please. So about this icograda S number, the idea is that we build it into a way that it's part of the icograda site, that it's very easy to express, and that there's enough numbers that we need forever and ever. Next slide. So the idea is then for, let's say, a print project, this URL that appears in the corner in small type, like a copyright would or not. Next. Or it could be a website. So way up there in the corner of my website, I have a sustainability number as well, an S number. Next slide. So how do we measure? We have our 4 facets of true quadruple bottom line sustainable thinking. Slide. And the idea, why would we want to do this? So the benefits for designer, there are several. First of all, designers get educated about sustainable products because when you go to the website and there's an idea of an item of how you earn your points for your product, you can click through and learn about it. The second is that we help designers, the members of our associations, will be able to have the confidence that they can do this, which is half the battle. The third thing is that we actually make our products more valuable because the clients will say, I have a corporate social responsibility requirement for my project. You've given me a way that I can audit. And so my products are more valuable because it is certified as part of a CSR initiative. Next slide, please. Now, for our members, that's us here in the room, the associations, and someday maybe the city-states, we give our members another reason to sustain their membership because we're saying this is part of our definition of professionalism for our members. So rather than having a passive relationship with our organizations, this is something that will affect people every day. If every time you're doing a project, you have a relationship with icograda as a member's member, then it gives you a really strong reason to maintain your membership in your professional association. And I really love this idea of having this daily bond with icograda. Next slide. So our clients also benefit because our clients, and you'll see why, you'll see the clients has a way of being part of this process so they can engage with us being as the conduit to their fulfillment of their sustainability requirements. And it also gives them something to measure when they want to measure CSR because they have a challenge, how sustainable or not. Next slide. Of course, for icograda, there's also side benefits because if we have this mark on products that has our name as part of it, then we're going to build the icograda brand. We also have the potential to attract sponsorship money because the entire presence, this online presence, could be branded, could be underwritten, and in fact, that's part of what we're working on right now. We also have, this is a maybe, this could work out, if we now have products that are now online and they've been graded in various ways, we have a huge statistical database that we can mine for information. And finally, and perhaps the most important thing, is that we're positioning icograda as the authoritative body for this matter. That we are the only people on the planet who have the global reach to come up with a sustainability standard that really takes into account all markets. Next slide. So here's the question you may be wondering, so what are we going to measure? Because first of all, we started thinking about, we'll measure the professionals, but you can't really measure the professionals. So instead what we decided is we would measure the projects, and then we'd ask our professionals to commit that the majority of their projects would have an S number. And as long as the majority of your projects have an S number, we'll consider you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. So for projects where it's cumbersome to do so, they don't have to do every one of them. They just have to do 50% plus 1. So in these 4 facets, we need to find a way for measurement. And so for social commitments, there's 2 places we can go. First of all, we ask that the project does not contravene the code of ethics. So most of our professional societies have a code of ethics already, and for those who don't, we have the standard icograda template for a code of ethics, which can be used as a fallback. The second thing is that more and more universal design standards are measurable. So for instance, if we consider a website, there are very clear standards for making a website accessible for people with disabilities or difficulties. There's a standard called WCAG2, and so we can say that websites need to comply with WCAG 2 level AA. And that's a very precisely defined standard. So we're saying if products are not designed in a way that they're designed for all, then they're not good enough. The second aspect is cultural. And the key to that is to comply with well-accepted international instruments, such as the UN Global Compact. The third is financial. And we do this already with our clients. We just make sure that every project has a strategy which demonstrates that there's financial sustainability for our client. And the fourth one, environmental, is where people tend to dwell the most on because they tend to think of sustainability as environmental sustainability. So I'm going to drill into that. That's where we're going to have rated items. Next slide, please. So imagine, and this is just a wireframe of what a page on the website would look like. When you come to this wireframe, come to this form, you would fill in who you are, what your project is, and what member of icograda you are part of. And then, if you could just scroll, please. We have this place where you'll commit to the 4 quadrants: social responsibility, cultural responsibility, financial, and environmental. Now for environmental, we'll have a series of rated points in the same way LEED certification now works for buildings. And so there'll be a series of things you can potentially comply with, and the thing is that you have to earn 100 points. So for instance, you come down here and you tick off a variety of choices, and these are all just examples. These aren't what we're going to use. So in stage A, maybe I'm planning my project and I figure out, okay, I've got 135 points. And then maybe by the time it actually gets finished, well, I still only have 115. A few things didn't work out, but I still have more than 100 points. And as long as I have more than 100 points, then I've passed the test of environmental sustainability. Now, a particular agency could say, no, we want to make a deeper investment. We're going to be an agency that will always have 150 points, and that's fine. So this gives us a way that you can turn the dial and decide how committed is a particular design firm to the sustainable practice. Now, the key to how do we decide what should be on the list and how many points they get, well, that's where the jury comes in, because we want to have point systems that truly reflect the global approach. So we decided to establish a jury of experts which would be balanced regionally around the world. And this is why, about a month ago, you all received an invitation to nominate one member to our jury. The plan is to have a jury made up of 18 people, and the jury is structured by members nominating a jury member, and then the sustainability committee can then fill it out to make sure we have the balance we need. And then this jury is going to vote first on what items will be on the list, and then how many points each get. Now we know from other professions that have tried to do this type of thing that sometimes the choices are naive. For instance, are fluorescent bulbs really going to be a good thing or a bad thing? And so every 2 years, we repeat the process where the jury of experts revisits this list and ups the bar. So over time, at the beginning, it's okay with me if the bar is relatively low, so people can get in the habit of doing this. And every 2 years, we raise the bar. The bar will be raised to make it harder. The bar will also be more clever. That's about the whole thing, I guess, in a nutshell. Next. So here's the core of it, the icograda sustainability standard. We have a longer document which represents the entire framework and gets more into the nuts and bolts of how we thought this up and how the mechanics would work. But essentially, that's the idea. Is that what you All right, there you go. Any questions?
Would you like to?
Well, I suggest we put the motion on the floor.
Yes.
Right? Like, doesn't people have questions?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if you would like to propose a motion.
I would love to propose a motion. Thank you. In fact, I have one in mind right here, and it goes like this: to adopt the icograda sustainability standard framework.
That's fantastic. Can you sing that?
Tonight.
Okay, so would anybody like to move? Jim, thank you. And do we have a second? Vision? Thank you. So we're opening floor to discussion. Do we have a mic here, please? Also another one here. Thank you.
Just a small question. Why do you use the numbers for URL?
We were trying to make it as easy to transcribe as possible, and the number includes a check digit. So if someone were to randomly come up with a URL, it probably won't work. So there's a mathematical formula where when you do a mathematical operation on the first 10 digits, it results in the 11th digit. And this way, that 11th digit is a check digit, and it means that 90% of random numbers or mistyped numbers will be rejected by the system automatically.
That numbers belongs to the project, or it's just the URL?
So once you get your S number, you actually just flip back to that number. This is a great example. So the idea is that, see, it's an 11-digit number with an S. And so that is the number of your project, and it's unique. Each product has a number. But when you put icograda.org in front of it, it would redirect you to a page which would give you a chain of custody report about the product, as well as a place that you could file a complaint if you didn't believe the report was accurate.
The reason that I ask this question is that this is against the search engine optimization. So rather use the project name for the URL instead.
It's an indexing system, so there's no reason why we can't use proper ethical SEO on the site itself, so that if people are searching for terms, it could drive you to a page within the site. However, for particular projects, we need a unique numbering system, which every project would always have a unique number. You know what? This is great. We've got 2 pages describing the details of how this gets calculated. If you want afterwards, I could show you why this number and how many millions of combinations we get and this type of thing.
David, I just have one comment. There's one word that really bugs me, and that is the reference to product. Because the majority of stuff that communication designers do don't purely fall into the general understanding and definition of what a product is. Shouldn't it just be project or initiative?
I'm sorry, I didn't misspeak. It is project, not product. Because, for instance, some of our projects there's no physical deliverable at all. So we're looking at the sustainability of the process by which that outcome occurs. And that also can be measured in terms of sustainability. But what I'm saying is that for a particular project, which will be issued an S number, that number would appear on any products that are an outcome of that project. Because a given project may have 8 things that resulted from it, and it was up to the designer to decide whether they want to get one S number for the whole group, or whether they get a separate S number for each item. Thank you for clarifying that.
Karen?
Yeah, I totally acknowledge the Icograda board and especially David Berman's for this work. You know, we talk about sustainability in Icograda for the past 10 years. It's great that something concrete has come out of it. And I think even though it may not be perfect, I think let's, start it, see what happens, and then you can adjust accordingly, because we're still early in the process of working sustainably. So I think that well done. Thank you.
This is Yan. I totally agree with Karen. I appreciate David's effort for these 2 years to make such great things here. I would like to make one recommendation in regarding to the responsibility. I do think design itself is very important. Like a sustainable design, it's not like just social, financial, and culture. As a designer, we come across that questions. We design some kind of thing that they call rubbish. So I do think it's very important to merit and to value the design itself as a sustainable designer. Thank you.
I just want to correct you, I did not come up with this on my own. This is the result of many people with a lot of thinking involved.
I forget, I think you and your team, but you are so attractive to our business.
Okay.
Are there any other comments? Then, Omar?
Peter, please go
Thanks.
ahead.
This looks great. I'm just wondering if there's any relationship to student work, or is this just professional work?
I'm making this up, this answer.
Sorry.
No, but what I'm saying is the intention was this is only about professional work because it's tied into the commitment a professional member makes when they join an organization, because we were urging all of our members to redefine their code of ethics to say it's not okay to not do sustainable practice. But it would seem perfectly, here's the part I want to make up for you right now. I can't see why you couldn't have a student walk through that exact process as an exercise when they invent products that don't really exist or projects that don't really exist. They can walk through the process of how they would imagine getting an S number. It all works. So why not? Yeah.
David, could you, David, Omar? Could you please explain the difference between this system and what, for me, is the most, let's say, out-of-the-box system already existing, which is the off-the-shelf, which is the FSC certification system? What makes this more convenient for us? What implications are there in relation to already other existing systems?
You just go forward one. I'm glad you asked this, Omar. So FSC, which is a standard which is more prevalent in the Western world, in Europe and North America, is a chain of custody system for printed products. And so it has to do with a certain way of making sure that the paper, the printer, the ink, the delivery, and all the way down gets an FSC compliance logo. So FSC compliance then...
Logo and specific number.
Logo and, that's right, the full chain of custody registration in the FSC system.
Ask the national auditing,
to issue an
Omar, can you please speak in the mic because we can't hear you?
Sorry.
So the idea, Omar, is that FSC compliance then can be one of the pieces we raise. So if we think FSC compliance takes care of 50% of the needs, the jury could decide to give 50 points just for FSC compliance, and that's a way to get very quickly to the end. But if you're doing a website, then FSC would have nothing to do with it. And so that's the idea, that we can take any international standard that exists or is evolving and decide that's how we'll point. We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Are there other, so FSC is for printed, are there any other systems that regard non-objectual or non-printing printed products or services, like websites?
Yeah, so for instance, in this famous book has a different type of thing from FSC. It's called the SFI certification. So it's a different rating system. It's got its own point value. We can say SFI would get 40 points rather than FSC. And then when we leave print, then you could say what the example I was giving before, WCAG or W3C standards for developing websites could be used for so many points for developing a website.
And the advantage of this is that anyone with the artifact in their hands or on their screen can immediately check online whether it's correct or legal or valid and so on.
Yeah.
I think Helmut had something to add.
The question about the order of your criteria or categories, you start with social. Is it not better to start with environment?
Well, they're not ranked. They're in an arbitrary order. I made environment last because I really wanted to make the point that people tend to just think, a lot of people use the word sustainability and environmental sustainability interchangeably, and they forget about social and financial, and certainly cultural is often completely forgotten, which is, it's all about, we're about culture. It's what separates us from the other animals. So, but I'm not saying one is more important than the other. They're all, we need all four. We don't have all four, we haven't got a sustainable product. Does that make sense?
Okay, David, we have the motion on the table, so we speaking on the motion, please, and not about the details. Lawrence?
Not on the motion at all the detail, and very, very briefly, on behalf of those of us involved in design education, a very valid point that those of us that are involved in writing courses and course curricula, it's really important that we are in a position to embed sustainability within our curriculum. So it's not seen as a bolt-on, an add-on, it is there across every course that we run. And by having a system that we can introduce students to, I think it will bring more interest to icograda, because there are many students that sustainability is an issue before the design organisation they choose to become part of. So I think it's key. We've already started some of those discussions in the break about how we can embed this much more into the curriculum.
There was something you wanted to add to that, David? That's Lionel.
Just, I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I think it's great that we're trying to do something very concrete. My only concern is that on some of those things, if you can just sort of speak to, I think you mentioned something about 51% of the projects that are maybe completed, that, you know, because as professionals, we are going to commit ourselves, our studios, to achieving particular targets. And I just said studios because I operate a studio, but I'm here on behalf of Registered Graphic Designers of Ontario. So if we were to adopt this, are we saying that X percentage of our members are going to adopt this? And then the practical terms that we're all working for clients, and there's a complexity as we go through this whole hierarchy, right down to, we do 1,000 little projects in the course of a bigger project. Clients work with multiple suppliers, and so you have different pieces of this. So I'm just envisioning, and I'm trying to see how this sort of all rolls out. And what I see here is something that can really, it's got the right direction going to it, but to me, there's so many unknowns, and it's going to take a certain amount of time and awareness through our own member bases and then all the way out to our clients before we're ever going to be able to run that URL on every printed piece or every website that we produce. The learnings that are going to be required before we ever achieve our goals, I wonder if we're a little early to be putting in some of these things like 51% of projects and things like this, or whether this is really a beta, it's a framework, we're moving in that direction, but is this much more of a wait and see? We've got targets. Can you just speak to those aspects of those specific targets that you mentioned and how we should respond to those?
Is it okay with you if I respond to that?
Can you please keep it short and sweet and up?
Sure. Okay, so Lionel, I'm glad you bring this up, and I think it's kind of poetic that you, being from one of the few design organizations in the world that has accreditation. Is Albert here? Oh, okay. Well, that 10 years ago we didn't think it was possible that designers would be willing or able to commit to a certification process where the government would actually issue them a number and all the things we've done in Ontario. And now that's our reality. We switch to it, and it's how we roll, and we don't have any problem with it. And it's going to be the same with this. You know, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have thought in Canada we would have had pictures of diseased lungs on cigarette packages because people said the industry will never go for that. Now, 10 years later, we can't imagine it going back. And it's the same with this. You know, Design Thinkers, your conference, best of the year in Ontario in 2 weeks. If the first Design Thinkers, if people weren't talking about sustainability, I bet you every speaker at Design Thinkers this year will at some point touch on sustainability in their talk. It's how we roll, but it's coming to the point where we have to start saying, what are we going to do about it? And if we don't start measuring, we'll never take it there. So this is why I'm proposing, you don't have to do it on every project. You only have to do it on a majority of your projects. And we're also leaving designers a lot of latitude to decide what they consider a project and what they don't. We're also giving them voluntary compliance. This is only being policed by the consumer. So there's lots of softness to this so people can get used to it with a minimum of effort. I've polled groups of designers because I speak often about these things, and I asked them, was this something you'd be willing to do? Would you be willing to take another 20 minutes on every project? You have to fill out this form, blah, blah, blah. And I get back an emphatic, yeah, we're willing to do that. So it's going to take some effort, but yes, yes, and yes. Did I answer? Is that an answer?
Yes, I think we need to start wrapping this up. The motion is to adopt a framework, and I'm sure that there will be many things to fine-tune and adjust at a later point in terms of details. So Can I please ask General Assembly to vote on this? And this is a general vote, it's not a professional vote. So everybody who has a green card and is in favor of adopting the icograda sustainability framework, please raise your hands. Thank you. Can you please see the abstentions? Can I please see against? Okay, so the framework is adopted. And now I'm going to give the floor to Russell Kennedy for World Design Survey and Indigo reports.
Thank you very much for passing that. That's something that I know David's very closely shown. He's worked on very hard over the last more than 2 years, and it's a great step forward for us. And I think it's a demonstration that we're, as an organisation, we have a slogan or motto called Leading Creatively, and I think that's a demonstration of how we have to start walking the talk. You know, we're in the business of producing a lot of stuff, and I don't know whether we refer to it as rubbish, but it may be one day, but it is a lot of stuff, and we've got a responsibility to actually back up what we say. And we do say a lot. You know, we're always championing the cause of sustainability, but we're now trying to create some measurables and some evidence about how we're doing that. And that leads me to the next point about walking the talk and measurables and evidence. And really that is the motivation behind the World Design Survey. The World Design Survey is an initiative that's been on the table for quite some time. It is about creating evidence and profiling the design sector worldwide. When I say evidence, it's about actually producing documentation and metrics that you can actually present to those decision makers that we spoke about earlier, whether they're governments that are developing design policies, whether it's NGOs, whether it's anyone who is interested in understanding the contribution that design makes to their society. So we've developed the World Design Survey. It has gone through a number of iterations. It's involved these cities and these countries that are sitting on the board. What we did, next slide please. Oh, this is an event that took place in Seoul at the end of last year. The event, this stage of the project was sponsored and supported by the Seoul Metropolitan Government and ran in partnership with us, but with the Seoul Design Centre. And I should acknowledge Suni Lee, who is the current President-elect for ICSID and Director of the Seoul Design Centre for really driving this for us and representing icograda on this project. Next slide, please. Okay, this went through a number of versions, and you're probably aware from the last board meeting the pilot survey, last year, the pilot survey that we ran, and then we ran an Asian design survey as part of the World Design Survey, and then the third version was the World Design Survey. So this is an ongoing process that's been developing all the time. But to get buy-in from those cities that were up there before, and those countries that had design policies, we decided to simplify the process, because it's a little hard to compare apples with oranges, because every country has a different process and different definitions on design, and it wasn't easy to marry things up. So what we did, we found a policy that we felt was covered the categories and definitions best, and from all of the stakeholders involved, and we structured our own version. And what we did is we created 20 indicators, 20 questions. So we could have easily offered 500 questions, but that would have probably turned more countries away than attracted them. So we kept the questions limited to 20 questions, And that enabled us to get buy-in from more countries, and they felt confident about participating. As we grow and we get more countries involved, we will increase the numbers. Okay? Next slide, please. 20 questions. So it's basically profiling design. So we're looking at the number of people who work in design, the definitions of design, the contribution to the GDP by design, the amount of magazines on design, television programs, etc. The Seoul Design Centre produced a website which is currently online, so you can access that and see the results of the survey. There's an online PDF that you can download. Next slide. Okay, so that was that's a project that we regard as probably the most valuable project that we do in many ways, because if we're going to take this next step and we're going to start to talk to this new audience of people that actually make the decisions in the world rather than designers talking to designers, we need to be armed with these facts and figures. And I know they're dry and dull, but as with the sustainability standards, sometimes you have to present measurable evidence of your industry. It's not good enough for us just to say to those people that design is important, design is great. They want to know why, they want to know how many people it employs and how much it actually contributes to society. So that's the World Design Survey, so that's really just a report on that. We are looking to take it to the next stage, so shortly we'll be inviting expressions of interest from other cities and other countries to actually take on the project and take it to the next level, so stand by for that one. The Indigo project. This is one that started way back, I think, back in Mervin's time. It was a project that started off as an idea, but it was started off as I guess as identifying the value of Indigenous culture and the threat that it's under, and that perhaps that design can actually play a role in helping it survive, but as an evolving culture. So this was established, and it seems to have gone very well over the period of time, and in particular this term it's really come of age, and we will see in this time next year there will be a major design week in Sarawak in Kuching, Malaysia, which will actually celebrate indigo in a big way, in that it will be an indigo themed design event. We'll hear from the Sarawak people soon with a presentation on that event. So next slide. We have set up both an advisory group and also a set of ambassadors. So currently, this is, so if you go back, that's the group that was actually chaired at the start of this term by David Lancashire, who was co-opted to the board the term before, specifically to look after this project because of his knowledge in the area of working as a non-Indigenous person with Indigenous culture. David's remained as an advisor, but Jason was kind enough to take on the role. So Jason Pham is actually the chair currently of the Indigo project, and if you have time, the Taiwan National University has an exhibition on at the moment, which is hosted by Jason's university, called Mother Tongue, and we'll show you some examples of that in a second. So the board is pretty well spread across the world. It's a mixture of Indigenous people and also experts in the field of Indigenous culture. Next slide. This is the next category of people we have involved in the Indigo project, and that's ambassadors. And these are people that champion the project internationally and create networks and contacts. Next slide. This is the website which was launched during this term, and I encourage you all to visit it. If you just go to the menu of the website and go to projects, you'll get a link straight to it. You'll see there the promotion for the Mother Tongue exhibition on the right. Next slide. And these are some of the activities that have sort of spun off the initiative, and this was an article written by Fred Valeros, who's an advisor on work research that she's done into Mayan culture and creating typography based on newly understood Mayan calligraphy, what's the word? Sorry? Hieroglyphics, that's the word. Okay, next slide. Okay, we've got a blog or a discussion page called Talking Stick, which gets quite a bit of traffic. Next slide. And this is the exhibition that was in the Ramonga district in Italy. And they had a design festival there and asked whether they could exhibit the work from other time, because some of the students from the region in Italy participated. And actually Omar Lopineri spoke at this conference, as did one of our ambassadors, Ebert Yeper from Switzerland. Next slide. And this is the current exhibition that's on at the moment at the National Taiwan University here in Taiwan. And if you want to know more information about that, I'm sure Jason can fill you in. Next slide. This is from the same exhibition called the Only 100. Okay, plans for the future with Indigo. Jason will be leaving the board this term, but so I've put my hand up to actually chair the Indigo project for the next term, but I'm also a little bit conscious, and some of the feedback that I've been receiving over the period is that this needs to be have more Indigenous involvement from Indigenous people, and it's important that the chair is a member of the board, but we felt that it would be good to have a co-chair situation with an Indigenous person. And I've spoken with Dr. Herman Clark, and he's agreed to do it. And he is a very interesting designer and academic from New Zealand, but he's actually from Hawaii, so he's a Polynesian Hawaiian, but he heads up one of the few Indigenous schools, design schools in the world, and there's 3 of them, and they're all in New Zealand. He is the director of one of them. Next slide. Oh. That's it, right?
Thank you. Okay. Now something completely different, a bit less exciting, but nonetheless necessary, and it has to do with our professional practice. More importantly, it has to do with speculative practice. So, as you know, as the world body for visual communications, we do strive to set certain standards for professional practice, and we mostly do it through our guidelines. So over the past terms, there have been several discussions prompted by our members about various competitions and instances when the work of professional communication designers has been sought in pro bono or even for governmental projects without adequate or if any financial compensation. We devoted a workshop to this during the regional meeting in Vancouver, and one of the outcomes of this meeting was that we decided that this subject needs a broader forum and urgent action. So what the board recommended and what we have done was that we formed a special international committee of members to assess our current guidelines, to provide feedback and to suggest what amendments and next steps we could take. So this was a small group, but it represented all different regions, and I would like to take this moment to acknowledge the members of the committee who have worked on this. Hilary Ashworth from RGD Ontario, Vijay Archery from Think South Africa, Vesna Brekalo from DOS Slovenia, Tom Gosner from BEDA, David Robertson for DIA Australia, Kelly Ze from HKDA Hong Kong, and Matt Warburton from GDC Canada. So we have reviewed existing best practice paper that icograda currently has, and we have discussed many examples of speculative practices around the world. The situation does seem to be similar everywhere, and it does present a huge problem to practicing professionals. We also discussed some examples from other disciplines and tried to find an optimal one when it comes to pro bono work. So we came up with 2 recommendations. One of them are the amendments, which I'm going to present shortly, to our current best practice papers. And the next one will have to do with a committee for the next term. So I propose that we go into the amendments to our best practice documents. There are several of them because when you change something, you have to cross-reference with the other because they're all interlinked. So I recommend that we do it, go through all of them, and then take one vote in the end. That will be, and then we will go into recommendations for next steps. So can we have, yes, okay. So amendment 1 has to do with the document soliciting work from professional communication designers. And what you see in red and bold is the things that have been changed from the old ones. So we tried to make it as clear as possible that only the non-speculative approach to evaluate competing designers is the one that adheres to icograda guidelines. Next. In limited calls for proposals, we recommended that soliciting work be based on portfolio review, interview, or references list, and not on doing the actual design work. And all designers invited to develop design work for the selection process need to be compensated with a full. In public calls for proposals, we only added this because it's part of the same document, so they write one behind the other. So we just added a sentence that it has to adhere to the same process that we just outlined for the limited calls and proposals. Then also in soliciting work for professional communication designers, we added this part that a designer shall not undertake any work in the invitation of a client or participate in competition with peers for any work without payment of an appropriate fee. And also we deliberated at large about what happens if the designer actually wants to contribute work pro bono for something. So we decided that also based on the examples also from other disciplines, that if you do something for free, you have right to be acknowledged as a sponsor of the project. And this is what we have recommended here. So if a designer decides to work without a fee or a reduced rate for something that is charitable or non-profit, so it has to belong to one of those two categories, and is specifically invited by a client, so there is no pre-pitching involved in selection, then he needs to be publicly recognized as a sponsor of the project for the full value of the fees. Okay, and then the next one is in the Model Code of Professional Conduct for Communication Designers. So what we have amended here is that a designer shall not undertake any work at the invitation of a client or participate in competition with peers for any work without payment or an appropriate fee. And the same thing about sponsoring, so it's just cross-referencing the documents that have the same stipulations. Can we move on, please? Okay, then we also have guidelines for jurors, which we have adopted at the last GA. What we have added here is that they should not only act as a jury member, take part, but also help promote design awards that do not comply with its best practices, because often enough we saw that people maybe refuse to take part, but they still help promote such events, and we think it's bad practice. So, no, we're going a bit ahead of ourselves here. Okay, so what I would like to propose is that we adopt the amendments to our best practice documents. And this is a professional vote, so only red cards. Would anybody like to move? Jim, thank you. Lionel, second, thank you. Can we please have a show of hands for the professional vote? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Is there anything in terms of discussion that anybody would like to add? Rob?
Just one concern about one of the clauses. I'm in agreement with everything that you proposed. However, I'm a member of a professional design association in Canada, and if it adopts these standards, that means that I would, according to the standards, not be able to do pro bono work for a nonprofit organization without receiving credit. And I might want to do that anonymously. or without receiving credit. So I would suggest that you modify that at their option in that one clause. Because the way it's worded right now, I have to receive credit if I do not receive payment.
Okay, I would actually need to have a professional voting member proposing the amendment.
So I'm giving this as a scenario where we're actually creating a potential problem for
I understand.
For a member. So just for your consideration.
Well, what about if perhaps, and can we, yeah, so the designer will be publicly recognized as a sponsor of the project for the full value of the fees, so that is his right to be recognized, but can we maybe just add, comma, that he has the right to waive this right? Would that satisfy you? Jacques?
I don't think the word waiver is the appropriate term. It should rather be withhold recognition.
Okay.
Because waiver would open up other ethical issues regarding copyright, because if you waiver, you give up.
Okay.
So it's rather not disclose.
Okay, so could we maybe have the amended motion in the long minutes? So is there a professional voting member who would like to propose this amendment? Thank you. Is there a second? Jim? Can I please have a show of hands in favor of this amendment? That the designer has the right to withhold recognition. Okay, thank you. So we are going with the amended motion. With the amended language, I'm sorry.
We see it on the screen.
So, amendment that we're putting here is that the designer has the right to withhold recognition as a sponsor. We'll have it on the main screen in a second. And this will, of course, be cross-referenced in all other documents that have this content. Is there anything else in terms of discussion? Something else to be added? Yes, Peter?
I see this as professional conduct, but again, from the position of education, we are professional programs. Does this affect students entering competitions?
Well, actually, we have not amended anything in regards for in regard of call for proposals for students, so that section remains unchanged. I can read it out for you if you want. So right now, call for proposals from students. If you want to limit the call for proposals to students of communication design, you must define the learning outcome of the assignment. It is not appropriate to publish a call for proposals for communication design work that is limited to students simply for budget considerations.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a comment.
Yes?
I think there's potentially a flaw in the wording here as well. If we say or at a reduced rate here, but here we say the full value, wouldn't this have to be the remaining value? Since you may have billed for part of it, but you're donating the rest?
No, you are publicly recognized. Okay, I see what you mean. Work without a fee or at a reduced rate.
I have a second comment. If in deference to Rob's very wise point, which I agree with, that you don't have to take this, then I wonder what's the point of this whole paragraph. We might as well just stop. to say you can undertake a fee at a reduced rate for charitable organization nonprofit, period. Because if doing this is optional, then it doesn't have to be a rule.
It's not optional. We're actually trying to make our clients recognize the value of design work, which means that if you have a designer working for less money or for free, you ought to recognize his contribution for the amount that it's worth. So in my opinion, this is actually very important.
It encourages the best practice to say it.
Yes.
Okay, by that.
Any other comments?
Is it possible to go two steps back, please? And just that.
Can you please speak into the microphone because I can't hear you?
Can I please just see them once more? Step 1 and 2 and 3, please. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Then I would like to call to vote to adopt these amendments to our best practice documents. Can I please have a show of hands, red cards in favor? I think I would need the scrutineers here. Okay, thank you. So we have enough votes and our best practice documents are amended. We have another recommendation from the Speculative Practices Committee, and that is a motion that a broader committee be formed during the next term to further explore this subject and also to incorporate the issues of authorship rights, which are often being violated in such cases, so that we would provide direction for procurement guidelines for non-award competitions. The committee members would work on a voluntary basis and would represent different social, economic, and professional backgrounds. They will be professional practitioners as well as representatives from corporate, educational, and promotional members. And all members would be invited to propose individuals for the committee, and the board is then given the mandate to propose additional individuals to fill in gaps in specific expertise, background, or geographic representation. So what I would like to do is I'm going to circulate a list around the room in case that there are members who would be interested in participating in this committee. You can sign up, so please just put your name, your organization, and some contact information. Thank you. And moving on, I think it's Russell again.
Take a little bit of time just to talk about a strategy that we've adopted this term, and that is to look at potential affiliations and alliances with other like-minded initiatives to ours. And obviously we've heard a little bit this afternoon about our commitment to sustainability, but there is a lot of activity going on around the world in this area, and we were a strong believer in not competing and not reinventing the wheel, but actually working with other organisations and to jointly pursue the cause. So when I think we were in Madrid last year, we had an invitation from the Living Principles to join as a foundation partners, and we discussed it in Madrid and agreed unanimously to do so. And the Living Principles is a partnership of a number of organisations, professional organisations, and also education associations. So we're more than happy to be part of that. David, if you want to follow into this any time, just add comment, but it's very much fits within our sustainability agenda, and also we're hoping that the designers, the Living Principles, will also be able to promote our initiatives such as the sustainability standards that we've just agreed to pursue. So again, if we just go through to the next slide. There are other like-minded organisations, but these are the partners: AIGA, Cumulus, Ignite Change, Design DMI, Green Blue, Global Network, Organic Exchange, Society of Environmental Graphic Design, Society of Graphic Design of Canada, and the Winter House Institute. So our philosophy is about working together and building alliances and affiliations. There's another organisation called Designers Accord we're also having discussions with. Cumulus, again, we're in 2004 in Copenhagen. Cumulus, which is an education network of art and design schools, decided to go global with their membership, and at the time we thought there may be a potential problem as far as schools being asked to join both organisations. So we started some dialogue with them, and it's progressed along quite slowly, but last year we were fortunate to have the president of Cumulus, Christian Julian, attend our General Assembly, and he also attended our board meeting. We had some very constructive discussions about moving forward and working together rather than competing, because they've got a very strong footprint in Europe, and our footprint for our education network is very strong outside of Europe. So it made sense for us to start talking. Since then, he followed up and asked me if we could just go back to that. They published the book, and he asked me to contribute an essay for that book. So that was as the president of icograda. So that was a start, I guess, to some discussions. We then put a draft MOU on the table with them, and then more recently, Julia Lino-Chu has had some really constructive discussions with them and attended their board meeting this year, and has really ignited the discussion again. So we're moving along nicely, and this will probably be something that we take into the next term, and we'll be able to announce that we have an association with Cumulus, and it makes sense. There are a number of initiatives that we have, including the iridescent and so on, where there's really some nice synergies between the two associations. So again, it's about building those affiliations and alliances. I think that's it. Cumulus, what else? Oh, UNESCO, I'll carry on with that. Is it now? Okay, it is. Okay, this again is an affiliation or a partnership in a way that we have with UNESCO, it fulfills our role in the category of advocacy. And what our role is quite simple, that we work with them as to help evaluate the applications for the Creative Cities Network. So we work on a number of different levels, but the Creative Cities Network, Julia touched on before, is a network of cities around the world that have in specific areas of creativity, whether it be craft, fine art and craft or design, gastronomy, literature, and so on. So when it comes to design, they ask us to review the applications, and they were the cities that we reviewed during this term, and all of those were successful. Thanks. Okay, that just explains the process of what we went through. So that's an ongoing relationship we'd like to build and continue on with. We're going straight into the other one? Sorry. As I mentioned, there's some other networks we have, DESIGNTV, that's a UNESCO connected project. Keep going. Okay. Now the IDA, as I mentioned earlier in my report, the IDA is probably our most important alliance that we have. And it's one that you've seen demonstrated this week as a major global initiative. So we're at the moment, the IDA has proven to be successful in a number of levels, mainly the Secretariat, but we've focused a lot of attention on the congresses themselves, and that will be the platform going forward. I'd just like to say that we did focus on unity as one of the aspects of this year. Probably the most important expression of unity for icograda is the International Design Alliance. I'm pleased to report that the commitment to the IDA by the IDA partners has strengthened over the term. Icograda has worked closely with DESIGNTV to improve the structure, operations and vision of the IDA. There have been major steps made in this term which will set the right course for the future. We are now starting to see the potential energy emerging from an improved collaborative approach and implementation of clearer and more effective management systems. The IDA partners agreed to adopt a new management model for the Congress bid process and project management, which will allow us to be more efficient with our resources, and that's going forward from this point on. ICSID will be the lead partner to manage the Congress under this new model. In Taipei, all three partners were united to deliver the IDA statement on free pitching. That was a major collaborative statement or initiative we made as well. So beginning next term, we will align the first meeting of the IDA partners, all the IDA partner boards in Montreal, and this is something that we've been trying to achieve for some time, whereby we can, like this week, we can actually benefit from the exchange and meeting between all of the IDA partners, board members, which we don't often do. We don't often get to meet them. So icograda is working with DESIGNTV on a long-term brand strategy for future congresses, and that has been approved this week, so that's something we're quite encouraged about. So what will happen is that event will be branded with a consistent brand which has been designed by Pentagram in New York, and it's designed in a way that it's got the flexibility to reflect the character of the host city, but also creates a strength to the event itself in an ongoing way. We also are working with our partners to create a framework for content generation and a method to do that. As you can see, the design of the edges was an attempt to do something a bit different and actually engage with the non-design stakeholders, and we want to continue that. But we also want to look at methods of actually continuing that dialogue and exchange between congresses. So we're going to have a look at that within icograda and actually make a recommendation at the next IDA executive meeting, and all three organisations have been asked to come forward with ideas of how to achieve that. Okay, so what we've been able to do is talk about the ongoing nature of the relationship, and I think from my point of view, I'm in a much better space about the relationship and very confident about the future of the IDA. We had a group of people on the IDA executive this term that were pulling in the same direction. Yes, we were focused mainly on this Congress as being the launch of the IDA in many ways. So we're really only just starting. The success story is more than the Congress, though. The Secretariat is a success story in itself, and the support we've had from the Montreal City government has been phenomenal, and we're now in the process of actually renegotiating that with them and to see what the next step is for our development. Whereas we've got a 15-year lease, which we're sort of halfway through at the moment. Sorry, 10 years lease, which we're halfway through at the moment. So we're looking at negotiation with that, and then with our partners to see whether we in fact stay there or whether we move on. But at this stage, we're probably in a position where we're just looking for giving them the first right of refusal, and this is what I'm trying to say, to see what their offer is. Okay, is there anything else, Brenda, that I need to touch on that? Future congresses?